15 years. That's how long my husband and I had been married. 15 years of inside jokes, lazy Sundays, and a life I thought was unshakable. But it took less than 15 seconds for everything to unravel. It started with a name I didn't recognize on a hidden bank statement, and it ended with a secret I never imagined my husband could keep: a child. Before that day, our life had a rhythm. Not perfect, not dramatic, but solid. We met in our 20s, still figuring ourselves out, and somehow grew up together. Our first apartment was so small, the faucet never stopped dripping, but it was ours. We painted our first house a hideous yellow and laughed about it for years. Eric was my calm, my anchor. The man who could find my keys when I lost them, who remembered to water the plants, who just held me when the world was too loud. Our friends called us the stable ones. And honestly, I wore that label with pride. I thought I knew everything about him. Every story, every scar, the idea that he could have kept a whole chapter of his life hidden. It felt unthinkable. It happened on a Tuesday. I was sorting receipts for our taxes. My job, always. That's when I saw it. A credit card statement I didn't recognize. His name, but not mine. Recent charges, regular transfers, in the same name every month. Anna Roselle's. My heart sank before my brain could explain why. I waited all afternoon, pacing, my chest tight. When Eric finally came home, smiling, asking about dinner, I couldn't even speak. I just pointed to the screen. I watched the color drain from his face. First recognition, then panic. A flimsy lie about helping a friend's cousin, but my silence was heavier than any accusation. And then he broke. The truth was worse than anything I'd imagined. 16 years ago, before we met, he'd had a brief relationship. It ended. A year later, Anna found him again. She was pregnant. She didn't want him in her life, only support. And so, for 15 years, he had been sending money. For 15 years, he had been hiding a son. His name was Leo. The days that followed were agony. Rage poured out of me like fire, my voice hoarse from screaming, "How could you? Was any of this real?" Nights collapsed into sobs that left me empty. I'd look at vacation photos, anniversary dinners, his arm around me, and feel sick. Had he been thinking of his secret then, too? Our home turned silent, suffocating. We moved around like ghosts. I slept in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, replaying years of conversations, looking for signs I missed. That silence was almost worse than the rage. Eric didn't defend himself. He sat in the rubble of my fury, admitting he was a coward, that he'd buried the truth because he was terrified of losing me. One lie had become a year, then a decade, until the secret was bigger than him. He said he loved me, that our life was real, but his words landed flat. About a month later, I snapped. We were fighting again in the kitchen, the same accusations, the same apologies. I looked at him and felt nothing. No rage, no love, just emptiness. "I can't do this anymore, Eric," I said, voice flat. "We're done." The silence that followed was deafening, and then I saw something I hadn't seen before. Real terror. Not fear of being caught, fear of losing me. "No," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Please, don't say that. I know I destroyed us, but the man you married is still here. I love you more than anything. Let me fight for us. Let us fight for us. Counseling, whatever it takes. And if you still want to leave after that, I'll let you go. But please don't throw away 15 years without trying to save one piece of it." His desperation pierced through my numbness. Not hope, not forgiveness, just the sense that maybe we owed those years a chance. Against every instinct, I agreed. Rebuilding was brutal. Therapy sessions where I unleashed all my rage, all my humiliation, radical honesty, his phone, his emails, his bank accounts wide open. Not because I wanted to police him, but because transparency was the only path left. We had to talk about Leo, about Anna, questions I dreaded asking, answers I didn't want to hear. He'd never met his son in person, just photos, the occasional update. He admitted he felt guilt, obligation, and a strange, distant connection to a boy he didn't know. He hated the secret for stealing pieces of his life with me. The breakthrough came one day in therapy. I told him I felt like an idiot, blind for 15 years. He looked at me, tears in his eyes, and said, "You weren't blind, you were trusting. I failed your trust, not you." Something shifted in me. I stopped blaming myself. That was the first brick of something new. 2 years later, our marriage doesn't look like it once did. The perfect couple is gone. The scar will never disappear. But what we have now is raw, fragile, and honest. 6 months ago, we flew to Oregon. Eric met Leo for the first time. Later, I met him too. A quiet 16-year-old with Eric's eyes. It was surreal, heartbreaking, but it was the end of the secret. Now, we live in the truth. Our marriage isn't unbreakable. It's scarred, patched, and still standing. We choose it every day. And maybe that choice, imperfect, deliberate, battle-tested, is what real love actually is. I've learned love isn't about perfect stories. It's about what you do when perfection collapses. Trust can't be glued back. It has to be rebuilt, piece by piece, until it becomes something new. I don't know what the future holds, but today, I know my husband fully. No hidden rooms, no locked doors. And together, we keep walking forward. If this story touched you, subscribe for more stories about the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of love. And if you'd like even more, I've shared other long-form audio stories in my Ko-fi library. Each one carries its own secrets, its own emotions. Maybe one of them will stay with you long after the story ends.